she offers breakfast
Scene was
and
wild, dude.
says, "Hey, you know, the cold has kept the flesh fresh. It's not rotting."
Ark objects. Ark is like, "What? Eat this?" And she's like, "No, don't worry. It's cold. The flesh is preserved. It's not going
as if that was the objection.
Yes. Very good. Fascinating stuff. We're now going into chapter 2 here, and Ark needs to kind of resurrect life. Like the land is brought back, but life is not around yet.
Yeah.
What are we fighting? Are they alive?
That's a great question. According to the spirit in one of the 5 towers in the underworld,
yes,
that monsters were the spirits of living things transformed.
Okay.
But this is a really interesting question because, you know, we'll get to this at the end of this particular chapter. At the end of chapter 2,
right.
They have that little, I don't know what you call it. I don't even know it's a montage, but it shows Ark dying and a flower growing from his corpse, an herbivore eating that, a carnivore eating that, carnivores reproducing, and then monsters coming and killing animals, and then Ark coming and killing the monster again, and then dying again.
The monster is the most fascinating part of that whole montage.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I kind of track, although the yak came before the bird, but whatever, I kind of track what it's doing. And then all of a sudden this weird like beetle cyclops monster ball shows up. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, this is strange. Either these were around from before, yet then they show up again later. It's interesting. I still don't know exactly what to make of that.
Yeah. But it's funny that this has been framed as life does not exist on this planet.
Yeah, but there's yetis.
You need to resurrect it. Yeah. But there are monsters everywhere.
Yeah.
So are we not counting monsters as being living things for some reason, or is that just a kind of an oversight? They're alive, but they're not like the good living things. You know
exactly.
What I mean?
They're the orcs. They're the corrupted. I have a thought here for this. A lot of this game, if I could say that like one of the, so much of this game is just spiritual by nature, right? And that's kind of what they're doing. Like who you're controlling and what you're doing and how everything kind of works all at once. It feels like there are spirits that are fighting, and that there are, I would almost say that these monsters are basically demons, is more or less what I would say.
That's probably a good word for it.
Yeah. As opposed to being a monster, which the same word can be used for, or like a long time ago, that same word was used for like a whale or a lion or something. It's like, this is the monster, or even birds, actually. The word monster means pattern, by the way. Did you know that? It means like a sign. It goes way back to the like Proto-Indo-European. The word for pattern in Swedish is mönster. That's what it is, yeah.
Wow.
So sovmönster means sleep patterns or something like that.
Wow.
It's fascinating stuff. But the word monster has changed. But you know what? Even just that definition right there, saying that a monster is essentially a sign or a pattern, that's kind of just gets us to the spiritual realm pretty quickly, actually. And before you know it, we're already talking about demons. And I almost feel like what Ark is doing in the towers, in the underworld, and above, especially with regards to like resurrecting the planets or the land and the life, is something like an exorcism. It seems like he's exorcising the demons, and he's not just we're just killing them. We're just like killing everything. But that's how games work. So I'm trying to read something a little different into this, and it is the fact that sometimes when we kill a monster, a little blue orb shows up, and it's like, oh, go to the nearest rain altar, or like whatever it is. It'll just show up and give us some information that makes you think, whoa, is this the same thing that we just killed? It almost feels like we like exorcised a demon and now it's good again. Right. Now it behaves properly. Right. Whereas before it was corrupted somehow.
Yes, I think you're exactly right. This actually matches right up with what Miyazaki said in the interviews we read. It's a creation through destruction.
Yeah.
And this was in all of their games. They wanted to make the violence, the killing, more than just mindless killing. They wanted to make it part of this duality, this creation destruction thing that go hand in hand or together. And so, I think you're right. I think that killing things in this game is not killing them maybe in the sense that we normally talk about killing, but more of a exorcism or a restoring it to its real form or releasing its spirit because it was trapped or something like that.
This is the funnest part about the fact that Ark is using a rod that, when in the underworld, is restorative, right?
Yeah.
The weapon is meant to kill things, but it also has this rejuvenating, like this restoration ability as well. That it's almost like in the act of killing things, the duality is almost expressed within that one item itself, within that Krista staff. Now, I know it doesn't, or the rod, it doesn't work the same above land as it does below land.
Without crystal blue.
Right, but that is an attribute of this particular thing, that it is not just death-giving, death-bringing, but it's also life-giving.
Yeah.
Which I think it's really cool.
Yeah, that's really, really cool.
Yeah. For sure. So now we come here. We come to
Chapter 2.
Eve Green, in Chapter 2.
Which is called Resurrection of the World.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. We start in South America. That was so interesting.
You know, I took a note on this because this happens more than once throughout the game. How much time has passed? They put emphasis on this multiple times.
Yeah.
And this just sort of reminded me of, you know, what we talked about in the first episode, the dev history episode, about making a very long time span feel compressed or short or like a blip from a certain perspective.
They play with this a lot.
They do this all the time.
It's like the whole game. Yeah.
It's he's always asking how much time has passed. Right. And I think the idea here is it's a lot of time has passed. Yeah. We are seeing centuries, maybe even, you know, thousands of years passing from one point to the next. And so I just took a note on that as part of reinforcing that point of how they make what feels like I should say it the other way around. What is a long time, they make it feel like a short time.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny too, because almost as soon as, well, this happens a little bit later, but almost as soon as you bring the birds back, you go and talk to one of the birds, and it's like, I've only been alive for 7 days and 21 hours, but here's what I think. And it's like, 7 days?
Yeah.
Like 7 days?
Well,
I just met you. I've been here the whole time.
Right. I know what you're saying. So it's like maybe 15, possibly maximum 15 minutes ago. I restored the animals.
Yes. Yeah. And they're already saying, I've been here for days, right? Yeah. Now, that's not the years you're talking about, the centuries and whatnot. But it's fascinating to note that, like, whoa, time is really flying here.
Yeah. It's like Ark is passing through a time lapse of Earth's history.
Yeah.
And like he's moving, it's like simultaneously he's moving at the same speed as the things directly around him, but like the world is just flying.
Yeah, when you're not there, time is a different scale.
Yeah. It's really, really interesting. I really like that aspect of the game.
Me too.
Yomi here says, Ark, you can think, but that won't change the world. I really like that line. Let's cut to the chase. Nothing will happen if you don't take action. Yep. So Ark is sitting here, wow, like he's just overwhelmed by the scale of this world, which is already, I mean, he thought his village was the whole world.
Yes,
and then the underworld with the 5 towers became the whole world. And now this is even bigger than all that.
Yeah.
And he's just overwhelmed by the task. How am I supposed to restore all that? And Yomi's answer, which I love, is nothing's going to happen if you just sit thinking about it.
Just start doing stuff.
Just go out there and start.
Right.
You figure it out as you go along. I've noticed that this is very true in just creative pursuits in writing, for instance. Like,
just start somewhere.
You can overthink it to death.
Yeah.
Whereas if you actually just get your fingers on the keyboard and start typing words, that's when you'll start getting the ideas. Yeah. At least that's how it works for me. So a lot of times you sit there, you're like, well, what should I say? Or how should I put this? And
it has to be perfect.
Totally paralyze yourself by thinking about what you should do instead of just doing it. Yeah. And what you should do will come to you through doing it, not through, I came up with the perfect plan first, now I can go.
Yeah, that's
Courage
right. That's
is kind of the same thing. Courage is not about, I feel a lack of fear, now I can go do the thing. It's about doing the thing in spite of feeling fearful.
Right.
And this is kind of a similar concept. You have to move to get the ideas to then solve the problems. You can't get the ideas first to go solve the problems. In a lot of cases, that's how it works.
They say courage is the one virtue that cannot be faked. Yeah. That in pretending to be courageous, you are acting courageous, right? Even if you're scared and you walk into a dangerous situation, like you are, that's by faking it, you are doing it. Yeah.
So I've got the raw tree next.
Yeah, and Eve green is what it's called. Yeah.
So I similarly put Ark wakes up in the Amazon in South America. That's where he awakes, right?
Yeah.
Makes his way to evergreen, which is
I wrote
red.
Eve green. Is it evergreen?
It is Eve green. You're probably.
But is it supposed to be evergreen because of text limitations? I don't know. Because I had a question about this. But there are several
Eve
places.
Green actually makes more sense. I probably just wrote that down wrong.
Okay.
But whatever. It's red. It's not green.
No, it is not.
It looks like there's like lava pits around, and like everything's just dead. Blood red, which is what you brought up last time. Yes. And he hears a voice calling him. I've been waiting for so long now for you to come.
And we keep hearing this voice.
Yeah. If this tree was a man, then these corridors would be his veins.
I like that. I like that. That's fascinating.
Funny line from Ark there, trying to describe, again, to probably a younger audience, you are inside of a living thing.
That's like a microcosm, like apply a different map, the way that it showed the clock and then Earth. It's like, okay, you can apply what you see there to this. What Ark is saying, hey, apply the typical physiology of a living thing to this dungeon right now. And it's like, that's interesting. I mean, he's just kind of resetting your mind a little bit into what you think that you're doing, right? Yeah. That's what a cave is. I remember thinking this a little while ago, but a cave is basically a tree. A tree is just, it's the negative space of a cave, just made to positive space so that it's all closed ends and whatnot. But if you just transfer it to negative space and have the tree be the empty space and then everything around it is rock, then you'll get what essentially looks like a cave with tons of branching tunnels and a network of tunnels and all that stuff. So he's bringing it to like the biological idea. Like if the tree's a person, then we're in its veins. I felt that. I thought that was pretty cool, especially since it's crawling with demon monsters everywhere.
Tons of monsters. Essentially,
parasites.
A parasite has infected this tree. And what the goal is here is to destroy that parasite so that this tree, which is essentially the life giver of the planet. This is
this is the world tree.
The world tree. Yggdrasil,
the tree of life.
Essentially, is what this is. And so once
basically every mythology
healed,
has this.
Yeah, once it is healed, then plant life will begin to be able to spread again on the earth.
And the tree is named Ra.
I wanted to see if you found
nothing but the Egyptian.
That's the only thing
god.
I could think of, and I'm not sure how that would apply.
I don't either. There's a few points here where I'm just starting to wonder. I have one thought that's budding. It is in its infancy. And maybe I should bring it up now so that people in the comments can help sharpen my perspective. But when I think of duality and I think of the underworld and I think of how the blue orb is the core of the world and essentially acts as that world's light source or the sun of that world, and then also later on we're going to see a blue flag with a red dot in the middle, and I'm going to kind of explain some of what that means. There would be a corresponding orb out around the outside world as well. And all I can think of is that it's the sun. That the sun is the orb of the outside world the same way that the blue orb is the light source of the inside world. Does that sound right to you, Ish? Okay. Yeah. So in that sense, Ra being essentially the sun god of ancient Egypt, I don't know if that has to do with a tree, but a tree, maybe Osiris had a little more to do with a tree. Actually, this whole thing here mirrors something similar to the ancient Osiris rituals that they would do a long time ago. But Ra was like a different location. Ra actually may share a lot of similarities with Osiris, actually probably more with Horus. But Osiris had like a fertility festival with pillars that they would call the Jed pillar. There we go. The Jed. Yep. Stable endurance, resurrection. But this isn't Ra. See, this is the dumb part.
That's why I'm a little confused.
This is so dumb. But I feel like it's relevant enough because we're in Egypt now. But Ra was essentially the sun god, has a lot of similarities with Horus. But Osiris had a ritual around a tree, essentially. That trees were considered to be these life-giving, they were considered to be property of Osiris, just in general. And Osiris was the god of resurrection, of course, back in ancient Egypt too. There's like thousands of gods. But the whole ritual around reseeding the entire earth with the light of essentially Osiris in a fertility ritual. This was done around what they call a jed pillar that they would erect, and it would go upright. And there's of course some anatomical parallels between the polar and the fertility ritual. This is how the ancient Egyptians were, and it was a whole thing that actually mirrors in some ways kind of what we're doing here. So if they called it Osiris, it would make a little more sense.
Yes.
Calling it Ra is
sounds
strange.
Better.
It sounds cool. Ra.
It just sounds more punctual.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the reason
Ra tree of life
behind why they would have used Ra.
Right. Other than the association with the sun, that this is something that is just chlorophyll and whatnot, just like what's that called, photosynthesis, has something to do with the sun.
Yeah. There's a spirit here that says plants started from one tree and proliferated only gradually. By saving Ra tree, the world should once again become green.
I like that one right there for reasons we'll talk about later. But there's like an archetypal single instance of the thing, from which everything comes from.
Right. You make your way down through the dungeon. You find a little plant named Lily. Thank you for saving me. The surface is ruined, but deep under, recovery is taking place.
Isn't that interesting?
That's very similar to Nausicaa, right?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
The poison forest and stuff, and it's like underneath all the layers of sediment and sand and rocks that water goes through and is filtered,
and it's pure
underground.
Yeah,
and so that's essentially what's happened here. You've gone down deep underground to a place where the water is purified, and there's some recovery happening there.
I just want to put an exclamation point on that sentence, that deep under recovery is taking place. Also, just remember that your Krista rod, your spear, that blue spear that you get right at the beginning of the game, it has these recovery properties, but they really only work properly underground. But underground, they're pitting underground as a place of recovery in essence, a place of some type of regenerative ability of the underlayers. Just like Nausicaa. I actually like that a lot.
Yeah, very similar to that. Lily says, thank you for saving me. The surface is ruined, but deep under, recovery is taking place. That plant serves as ideal flippers. Take it with you. So I loved this joke, too, because Yomi makes fun of Ark for not being able to swim.
Oh, that's right.
And Mark's like, where I'm from, this isn't needed. Like, what are you talking about?
Okay, that got me thinking, by the way. Is that lava in the underworld? Is that what we're seeing?
There is lava down
lava?
there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so their oceans are lava.
Basically.
But the ground, now this is another question, is that snow? Is that ice? Because it looks white. And
I think that the ground is just like cooled, lava,
molten.
obviously.
Okay,
it's but there are crystal mountains.
Okay, but it's crystal
underworld.
And not ice.
Like it's those sort of protruding, bluish white.
Because there's a reference to ice
mountains.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, ice. All the characters freeze, and they talked about them turning to ice.
Right. But I wonder if that's proper translation.
And the crystal is blue.
Right.
I mean, the central core crystal, that we've been talking about is blue, and that's the source of crystal blue. I don't know. But there definitely are crystal mountains in the
It just looked like snow tundra and then crystal mountains with oceans of lava. There's something wild about that contrast.
That's
strange.
It's definitely true. So anyway, I took a note here about loving the banter between Yomi and Ark. Like anytime they interact, it's basically just like making fun of each other in some way or another, or like ribbing, calling each other idiots somehow, or like something like that.
Or there's some argument where he's like, I'm more intellectual than you.
I'm out of your league intellectually.
Yes, right.
I took that note down too. We'll get to that.
So
that's towards the end of the episode, but
that's pretty funny.
Yeah, they're always bantering in this way that I find very funny. And Yomi basically, like, he kind of stays out of the way. Like, he doesn't pop up too often, except for, like, in very specific kind of moments to either make fun of you or to, like, kind of keep pushing Ark forward.
Yeah.
Like to keep him on track.
Right.
Which is something to, I think, keep in mind. Like not to think too hard about what I'm saying with that, but just pay attention to when Yomi shows up and why. Like, why is Yomi choosing this moment to sort of like pop in and like.
There were a few times where I thought that seemed a little random.
Yeah. Like what is he doing? What is his motivation, right? Particularly because he claims to have been trapped in that box. And thank you for saving me. So what reason does he have to like accompany you through this whole thing? Why did he choose to do that? Right. He chose to be your little companion through this journey. So the boss's name is Parasite, the boss that you fight here. Yeah. You have to get like a
dew.
There's like a dew drop that like purifies poison that you get from underneath, again, like the sort of purified part.
Yeah, that's right.
And so when the boss puts that wave of poison out, you use the dew drops to protect yourself from the poison, and then you can fight that boss.
They are called, by the way, raw dewdrops.
Yes.
So it's not just the tree; it's the water as well. This type of water that is called a raw dewdrop. So there's something. It's not that raw is necessarily the name of the tree. It almost seems like raw is the name of like a place, or there's something broader about the name raw than just the tree.
After you defeat the boss, the raw tree says, "Ark, I have waited long for this moment. Plants changed into monsters should regain their form." See, they're also saying plants changed into monsters.
Yeah.
Should regain their forms.
Plants changed into
monsters were corrupted souls of plants. Green will soon carpet the world, but remember this, it is still too early for the world to be resurrected. You must lead the growth of living things. Now, this exact speech...
You must lead the growth of living things.
This exact speech will be repeated again and again with each dungeon that we finish and with each, revivification that we complete, just with substituting plants for birds and birds for animals and then animals for humans or whatever. So it's essentially the same. But you must lead the growth of living things. We see a spotlight on a patch of ground where a single flower grows as rain falls.
Yeah.
And then a wind comes and carries the petals away, and seeds are spread throughout the world. That's sort of the resurrection scene that we see here. It's one I loved it. If it's not my favorite, it's probably my second favorite resurrection scene.
I think it's my favorite one.
It's really cool. Yeah. Again, just they're so creative in the way that they go about evoking visually, like the feeling of life, like coming back after this long, long time, and the beauty of nature and of the green, grass and plants and trees just sort of spreading, and you just see this dead world that just gets like wiped in a transition to the green.
Yeah, it's so cool.
All while this like kind of, I don't know what you call that. It's a
seed,
like a seed, but it's like the thing
that kids like to blow.
Yeah, you blow it, and then they
I don't know what they're called.
I don't know what that's called.
Dandelion, I guess.
Is it?
But there's a name for the stage.
I have to know what that's called.
That stage of a dandelion.
Yeah, it's those little white kind of fluffy, and you from the stem you kind of blow them and they go on the wind, right? So that's what you're following. One of those is it's just floating on the wind, and the earth is being transformed all around it. It's a really beautiful scene. And of course, the music is fantastic accompanying that. But
from this point, we fast forward probably like 100 million years, and now the whole earth is covered with lots of this stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the amount of time that it would take to do that. So then we come back to Ark.
Millions.
As green leaves are falling from overhead, and then we come back and Eve Green has been transformed.
Yeah. But I have another thing to bring up here, and this is not the last time that I will be making this parallel. That flower reminded me a lot of Flowey from Undertale. And in fact, as I listened to the music from this game,
it's certainly influenced.
Oh, I think heavily.
Yeah.
I would guess that possibly this game, more than any other game, influenced Undertale that I've played.
Yeah.
A lot of the themes, a lot of the story, a lot of the characters seem very, there's some big similarities between Undertale and this game.
Yeah. Okay, so the Raw Tree says, "It's good of you to come. I am the origin of all plants and Ra. See, in Ra, that sounds like a place.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Deep underground, I sensed and awaited long for your arrival. Living things on the surface. Okay, that's interesting too, because he comes from underground.
Oh, sure.
Ra has roots underground.
Right.
I sensed you were coming.
That's right. Okay.
From underground. So that's interesting. Huh. Living things on the surface are locked in sleep, the way we were. Ark, you must roam the world, hear our voices, or hear the voices of living things. The path you must now take will be marked by plants. I have a small gift. Summon me with it if you require healing. You get a grass pin. I never used the grass pin. Did you use the grass pin?
Not to my memory. I actually forgot about the magic stuff for a while. I didn't totally forget. I just ignored it for a long time. But towards the end of the game, I started like, I've got all these freaking rings. I got to start using things.
Yeah.
I got to start doing this stuff. But yeah, I don't think I ever actually used that.
I don't think I used any of the items that are given to you by the things you revive that say, if you need me, summon me.
That's right.
I'm assuming it's kind of like a healing item more or less, but yeah. So that's the end of that section. Yeah. So now as you're going through the world, you'll see flowers and plants that you can talk to.
Yeah.
They'll give you hints about where you should go next. They sort of guide you.
The flowers that you can talk to are usually moving a little bit.
Yeah.
It's interesting though that the Ra tree says living things on the surface are locked in sleep.
Yep.
That's an important line. It's such a very important line. And
well, especially because the spirits of living things were transformed into monsters.
Yes.
And now on top of that, you're saying locked in sleep.
Yes.
So in that transformed state, they're locked in some kind of sleep. They're not conscious.
Yeah.
And the monster is some kind of unconscious.
I like that. Yes.
See where I'm going with this?
I do.
It's some kind of unconscious version of that thing. Some sort of like again, the two sides of the coin concept. So,
right.
Anyway.
That's like the hidden latent potential that this thing could become under the wrong influence. And then we show up and point it in the right direction and give it a correct
kind of
influence.
Like Ark himself.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yes, exactly like Ark himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never played a game that concerns itself so much with the simple beauty of life, by the way.
Yeah.
With that scene, the length of time that scene takes as we're just watching this little seed traverse and just spin in circles. Mm-hmm. And the longer it goes, like I said before, the longer it goes, the more it seems to be saying.
Yeah.
And it's really cool until it finally descends and the pixels get so big. By the time it descends down, you're just like, this is just a pixel mess. But from a distance, it looks really cool. But yeah, I've never played a game that concerns itself so much with just with simple beauty.
Yeah.
This is really something.
That's really the hard part to put into words or to articulate is what the game makes you feel with moments like that.
Yeah.
And, if it didn't make you feel something, and obviously I'm not going to be able to explain it in a way that'll change your mind, but, I've seen some people saying, I feel like the game's been really boring. I'm not getting it. Like, I'm not sure what you guys are seeing in this.
Play it again.
Play it slowly. All I'm saying is if you don't feel something during those segments,
right,
then I could see how this might not be doing anything for you, because that's kind of what the game is those moments.
You play a lot of game and then you get that moment.
It's for that moment. If that's not rewarding you, then I don't know. You're not having the same experience that I'm having, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so Grey Cliff is the next area here. You have come across a flower. You will no longer be alone. We will always watch over you. When living things are revived, they will come to your help. Ahead, there is a land that was a paradise of birds. Like us, the birds must be awaiting your help. So reviving birds is the next sort of step in the journey.
So we go up to Colorado.
So I wrote down all of North America is labeled basically as Colorado.
It's like the west, northwest. Yeah, it's just Colorado.
As someone from that state, I'm okay with that. America can be Colorado. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, represent. Of course, Colorado means the color red, I believe. So.
I've lived in 5 states at one point or another.
Yeah.
Colorado's probably my favorite. So, yeah, I love Colorado.
And most of the states you lived in were desert states.
Yeah,
so
pretty
Colorado
much.
would be quite
a nice
beautiful.
contrast to that.
Yeah.
So this is a really long dungeon, this Grey Cliff dungeon. There's a lot of like bird monsters that attack you and stuff.
And try to poop on you.
Yeah, there's a lot of climbing.
Yeah, tons of climbing. You get
mountains.
those claws.
That's my favorite
that's
freaking part of this is I just love that animation as he's like using the claws to climb. Again, just another of a long set of amazing animations for the main character in this game. So expressive. Again, they almost say more about his personality than any of the dialogue actually does.
That's probably true.
I think it's great. And then the boss of Grey Cliff are these dark twins. But the thing was that I had explored it so thoroughly to try to find all the treasures and everything. I think I was level 12 when I came up to this boss, and I killed it before the second bird could come in. So I didn't even see the twin part. I killed it too fast.
Wow, congrats.
So I'm not sure if there's this is something I started thinking about more when I was rewatching my playthrough that I recorded for footage to use in the podcast, the video podcast. And I started thinking about, okay, it makes complete sense why Parasite is the boss we fight to free the Raw Tree, right? Like that's intuitive. It's very easy to understand why that boss is is chosen. And so I started thinking about the other ones. Why the Dark Twins? What does that represent as a thing that's preventing the revivification of birds?
Right.
And why is this? What was the name of the one in Zoo? The Storm Master. And I have a different take on the storm part of that. Like the storm part of it I get. But why is it this like almost a humanoid looking skeleton? We'll get there in a minute. I know there's 2 parts of that boss fight. Don't worry. I have a whole bunch of notes on that. But the point was I was trying to think about why dark twin birds were sort of like, because again, I do feel like every choice made design-wise is done for a really specific reason. So I was trying to intuit or sort of figure out, why each boss design was designed the way it was. So it'd be interesting to see what people think in the comments, because I really do think all of these bosses are very purposefully designed. And I have a lot more notes on the Storm Master, and the Parasite, like I said, is very obvious. There's almost no need to even dig into it. But the Parasite kept the Raw Tree from spreading life. The Dark Twins are somehow keeping birds from reviving, and the Storm Master was doing the same for the animals of Safarium.
So the fact that there's 2 birds could be part of it. They would have to not be unified with each other is the problem for my idea. But you climb to the very top, to the pinnacle of a mountain, and you basically, after you bring the birds back, there is the king of the birds, right?
Yes.
And he's just like one bird. He looks pretty jacked. But he is the singular monarch of the place. But when you come to the pinnacle of a mountain, which is where all of the constituent elements beneath it all kind of gather into like what should be a unity, instead we have 2. There's a duality happening, and it's almost like it's almost like there isn't one singular vision that can unite everything towards which it can aspire. Instead, it's 2 things, and that divides it and keeps it divided so that the birds just can't come into being. That is me on the spot, just kind of trying to think of something.
I think that's a really nice sort of like initial thought and theory, and I think there's probably more that we could go into that.
Theoretically, you'd only have to kill one of the twin birds then, which you did.
Which I did. I killed one, and so the second one became King of Birds, I guess.
That's pretty funny.
But yeah, I didn't really have much in terms of like a thought on why that was the choice, and if anybody else in the comments has some ideas on that, I'd love to read your thoughts on that. But yeah, so you kill one of the twin birds, and a voice says, "Ark, I have waited long for this moment. Birds changed into monsters should regain their forms. But remember this, it is still too early for the world to be resurrected. You must lead the growth of living things."
Lead the growth.
I love this one too. You see an egg hatch.
Yeah, this is cool.
An eagle flies into the sky. And then this
tons of birds.
Beautiful landscape of silhouetted birds flying over the horizon.
Yeah.
Really, really pretty. One of our favorites, Keith, is here. Keith Comito. This reminds me of the split at play in the Dark Crystal.
Yeah, the two birds, the duality, keeping from that unity that can help things flourish.
Right. I think there probably is something to that.
Sure, we got to talk about the Dark Crystal. My kids have watched that, by the way.
They like it?
Yeah, they loved it.
Gosh, I love that movie. I freaking love that movie. Yeah. Such a good movie.
I have a book of it too.
Okay, so you see, so you go to the paradise of birds at this point. I love the music here. You got kind of the waterfalls, and you can climb up into the higher place. We have the kingbirds, which are the red ones. Really pretty, nice music. Cool. The bird says, "Oh, I wish I could spread my wings and fly in wide open skies, but the signal from Windvale has not come yet."
By the way, Vale means like valley. That's where the word valley comes from. So the Valley of the Winds.
Valley of the Winds.
Nausicaa.
We have
once again. It's our second Nausicaa.
We have not received word. The wind from Windvale is supposed to tell us when to go look for new lands.
Yeah.
Did you write any notes about that? I thought that there's something that feels very mythical about this.
Yes, very, but I couldn't figure it out. Unfortunately, again, a lot of this game is still a mystery to me, which is good.
Yeah,
but that's a good thing.
Yeah,
because it keeps it approachable in a way that I feel like I can keep drawing more out of it. But you're talking about the place where you throw a rock in, and
well, just the concept, I guess, of
wind.
Wind has to come and tell the birds when to go somewhere.
Yeah,
so they can't just go somewhere when the wind doesn't come. This feels very mythopoetic in the structure of the type of problem you might encounter.
Yeah.
Right? Like this feels like something from an ancient story where, if the wind doesn't come, then we can't go where we need to go.
Yes. You just have to accept that as a fact. There's no reason given. It's just this is how it is.
Right. Whereas, again, if you're thinking more on sort of the grounded, more realistic,
scientific,
character-driven stories, this type of thing is like, if you know that you should be going and looking for something, why don't you just go?
Right.
But that's not what mythopoetic stories are told like, because those kinds of details are not what the story is sort of trying to convey.
Yeah.
The story is trying to convey archetypes and symbols that represent some sort of deeper truth.
Yeah.
And so you accept this thing. You're not thinking about it on that sort of logical level. And so, the birds, they just don't know where to go because the wind isn't telling them where to go. I suppose anybody out there who studies birds and the magnetic field of the earth or whatever could probably explain away, well, if the world was somehow out of balance, the birds would fly the wrong way because they'd be getting the wrong signals or the wrong sense or something like that. So I'm not totally saying this is illogical from that point of view or that it's lacking logic. All I'm saying is that the presentation that the story is given is done in a mythopoetic way, not in the more modern form of storytelling way. And so I was wondering if there is some sort of symbol or archetype at play here for this thing that we depend on from nature is not happening. Oh no.
Right.
What do? We can't function without that thing.
Right.
And I feel like I've seen that a lot in myths.
Me too, yeah. You're right that this is common. I actually can't think of maybe any more detailed
at the moment.
I do know that the winds often play a big part in old fairy tales. You got the north wind in particular. The north wind is like the most powerful of the winds, but the east wind, the west wind, the south wind, often people have to go and meet the different winds and talk to them and say, hey, why aren't you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Of course, probably the most famous one of this would be in the Odyssey, where he gets the bag of winds, right? And then He's the winds
to keep it
closed. Keep it shut. And of course, Odysseus falls asleep, and then his people go and open it. No, now
he tries to stay awake for like several days.
Yes,
to make sure guarding it so no one opens it.
And because he couldn't make it that last, he was like within the shores of Ithaca. He was like right there, and then that last hour. Asleep. Boom, everything gets undone. But once again, it was like a unity of wind. He was given that one singular wind that can take him back home. With all the other winds, it was too confusing. Usually that's the case. A time where the wind stops blowing, Final Fantasy IV. Five. Final Fantasy V kind of, it's just a sign that things aren't right. And I don't know exactly what it would be saying other than wind is often equated with spirit.
Yeah.
Wind, spirit, and breath in almost every language on earth are the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, at least if you go far back enough to the roots of the languages. And because they are so closely associated, it almost seems like the birds are looking for a guiding spirit. It's not, I would say it's not even that they don't know where to go. It's more that they don't know when to go. Because as soon as we finish resurrecting, I think the animals, they say the long winter is over. It's now springtime, right? So we've got the day-night cycle symbolism happening of just like one day, and that's all, that's like a microcosm of like a whole billion-year life of a planet. And then we also have the season cycle that's happening here, where we're approaching this planet in the dead of winter. It may not feel that way because we showed up at the Amazon and everything was like a desert, but they're referring to it as a winter. And once we bring life back, they say spring has finally come, right? And that's when the birds will start migrating. They'll start flying in the springtime. So it's more of like a when, but it's also less of the wind itself and more of the spiritual guidance, which is what Ark is. Ark is the spiritual guide. And that's what we represent throughout this whole game, because it's millions and millions of years that are happening here. And we keep going from place to place doing different things. But what we're really doing is we're providing the spiritual like guidance for people to know when to do what to do and how and why and all of that stuff.
I can see just in the observation of nature why, ancient cultures sort of assumed the cyclical nature of life when there's so many examples of that just around you.
Everything around you is doing the same thing.
Goes in a cycle. The days go in a cycle. So many animals live their lives based on the changing seasons and cycles. Their behavior is predicated on that cycle,
on that same stuff.
And so the assumption
the
that
stars
life,
as well.
Certain times of the year there are patterns and cycles that they go through, and so there was just an assumption that life operates the same way. When you die, it comes back, and you do it again, and
just like a plant, just like everything,
just like everything that we see, right?
The stars, everything.
So, anyway.
One of the birds uses the word life stream, which predates Final Fantasy VII. It's pretty cool. They're like, oh, you returned the life stream of the birds to normal.
When humans lived, they often came to steal our eggs. But we have no fear of that now. It is blessedly peaceful.
Oh, jeez. Because we know where this is going.
Yes.
We're bringing everything about.
We've actually had a couple of people in the comments of the latest episode and in Discord say, I get this feeling that I've resurrected all of this life and that now I'm going to bring people in to mess it up.
That's sort of what's happening.
And I don't know how much time I want to spend on this, but it is a thought that I have because I see this kind of sentiment all the time in the world. Just people angry about the destructive power of what we do to nature in our expansion and our technology and in making our own lives more convenient or at whatever, not looking at what the cost of the waste is and, carbon emissions and whatnot. So, and just the destruction of habitats and animals endangered and things like that, right? So I really, really, really do not mean with what I'm about to say here that I find any of that excusable or that I'm not against the destruction of nature, especially needlessly so, or done in a seriously wasteful way in the pursuit of lowering costs for corporations for their production and things like that. So I'm on board with the sentiment. But the thing that always comes into my mind is when people seem to act like, oh, we are destroying nature. We're acting against nature. Like we are a force that is
like an alien force.
Like that we are somehow separate from it, something outside of it that is imposing our will on it.
Right.
Instead of we are
part of it.
We are nature. We were born from it the same way everything else is.
Yeah, I've often
And so I think that there's something very interesting being set up here. Again, we talked about in the first episode that there is a view of the world, and I think even more specifically, a view of humanity from the point of view of something outside of humanity.
Okay, right.
That this game is trying to frame that up. The story is trying to frame up this understanding, this view, this point of view of humanity from the Earth's perspective or from something outside. And this is, I think, the first line of dialogue I've seen in the game. Maybe there was some back in Krista itself that maybe I overlooked or something, but the first one I can think of that is beginning to set up where I think this game is going in its view of humanity. And so, again, duality is a big part of that.
Right.
So is this going to be a humanity F's up the planet and is bad? Well, that's not a dual view. That's a single view.
Right.
And so this is one of those two dual views that it's beginning to foreshadow.
Yeah.
When humans lived, they often came to steal our eggs, but now we have no fear of that. It's blessedly peaceful without the humans around. This bird is saying that to the face of a human being.
Yes. 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 Without Ark, the birds don't make it.
Yeah.
But with Ark, the birds can't make it forever.
Yeah.
And this part also is the one of the lines that was referenced, I think, in one of the interviews we talked about in our Dev History episode, where the guy said, "Oh, how does progress deal with bird habitats?" I can't remember the specific line from one of the developers saying that, like, well, maybe the humans, as they progress, kind of ruin the habitat of the birds around them, and that these birds rightfully, like, they're right when they say this. Yes, things are more peaceful, well, in a way, certainly, without the humans there. But if things just stay as they are, then kind of what's the point? Like, this is what Ark is always admonished to continue doing: lead life. Keep leading means keep going somewhere. You're not leading if you're just staying put.
Right.
So things are moving, right? And the birds are saying, "Oh, it'd be great if we just stopped," which is also what the humans probably say. It's what humans today say. It's what a lot of people feel. You know, we get comfortable and we say, "Oh, I wish things could stay like this forever." I've heard it and probably said it many times in my life. But the fact is that Ark has a job to do, which is to lead life towards a future, into the future. And to move, and as what's his name? Because this is in our Never-Ending Story episode.
Oh,
Atreyu.
Yes,
you have to move or you'll die. Right.
Yes.
You think that you'll just be comfortable, but in some ways, excessive comfort is death. Or can lead.
And
to
we
death.
talked about that a lot in our Lord of the Rings podcast too. Is you could stay comfortable where you're at and ignore, like, the outside, but there's no growth in that. Like,
and the hardest thing is when you're a species and you're looking at the negative future of your entire species on this, like, grand scale, and being like, "Oh man, that sucks." But when you step outside of that and look at all of Earth and all of life on an even grander scale, then you see something like a invisible hand guided progress happening. Right. But when you go down into one of the species, it's like, ooh, like the dodo bird. It's like, well, this sucks. Mm-hmm. my people all die. It's like, yeah, but if you were able to see it from a different perspective, you maybe wouldn't necessarily think this, right? And this is also even for humans. This is a difficult thing for humans to think about too. Well, a future without humans, what would that even be? Like, how is that even possible? Why would that even happen?
Yeah.
We can't even really think about it. But imagine imagine seeing Earth from a perspective that could have viewed all the billion species that have ever lived on this planet forever, and then, just thinking of it from that perspective, I don't know, you might just put a little bit of a different idea in your mind on the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. There's something else very interesting about the fact that this bird remembers humans.
Yes, a lot of them do.
Like, again, the logistics of the resurrection that's happening here.
Yes.
There are other animals too where
the lions are like, here's humans.
There's a gull, who says, "Oh, what about Leo the lion and Simon the rhino?"
Yes, they all know each other.
Like, what happened to them? They're gone. These birds were just resurrected by us, and they have memories of the previous cycle and other animals and friends that they knew in that time, and of human beings. That's very
interesting, yeah.
So,
and of course, there's that line in Krista where the girl says, "Oh, I heard that boys and girls know each other from
a past
life, and that they find each other again," something like that.
Right. So what's logistically interesting about this to me is if we're thinking about a world coming back to the beginning of its cycle, my first thought would have been the first animals are the first animals of the past cycle, reborn as the first animals again in a cycle that repeats the same way as last time. I don't even know if they thought this much about it.
I know that's hard.
That's not the case of what's happening here. These are birds that were from the end, it appears, of the last cycle.
Interesting.
Now born as the first animals and birds of this cycle, who have memories of the past one.
Interesting.
That at some point came to an end. Now they're back and they're going, oh, but where's all my friends? I was just here with Leo and all the dudes chilling.
That's an interesting view. That's an interesting perspective.
And so, these are not it's not a complete repeat in exactly the same way as the last time. It's almost just like the world as it was before it came to an end is coming back almost in this extremely time-lapsed speed back into the form it was in when it ended. It's hard to explain what I mean, but hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if they were thinking that or if it's just more of a getting across some of the ideas of death and rebirth. You come back again. There's a cycle to the individual's lives in the same way as in the Earth's life.
Yeah.
And it's just, communicating that point, and you're not supposed to think about it on that level. But
I don't know either, because in some ways you can read these animals as these aren't individual animals. These are collective. These are like archetypes.
Yeah.
This is an archetype of a bird. This is the archetypal bird that you're talking to. And I'm actually going
That's probably a better way to think about it. I think.
I'm going to go into a spiel later about Adam Kadmon, which is in Jewish Kabbalah. He's like the primordial archetypal man. Right. And this has a lot to do with what is called the cosmic anthropic principle, which is the idea that the purpose of the universe, and this is just, you can just regression, just go from now and go back and say, well, whatever happened, it led to this result. So we can just assume that this was the reason. If there is a reason, it was to do what it did. So humans essentially seem to be the pinnacle of life as far as we know, as far as we can tell. Then the point of the universe would have to have been, if it had a point, would have to have been to bring about humans, right? That intelligence and this consciousness to the universe and all that. But the idea, that would mean that there was an idea of a human that predates the universe itself, right?
Sure.
And that's a version of the cosmic anthropic principle, right? And this is the Jewish Kabbalah. We talked a lot about this in Xenogears. In fact, Katamoni was the name,
the computer.
So this comes from the idea of Adam Kadmon, which is like the archetypal first human, basically. But I'm going to extend this idea, well, not even the first human, just the archetypal idea of a human. Right? Yeah. Like the concept of a human before you initiate a universe in which humans then are born. Well, there's almost an idea in which these birds are like the archetypal bird catamon, right? This is red kingbird catamon. And it's like I'm the first of the red birds. And all of the animals that we talk to, even as it goes throughout the game, I feel like they are mostly representing a 30,000 foot view of their whole species as a whole, instead of just this one individual that's millions of years old.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that again plays into the mythopoetic nature of this game. The logistics are not the important part. In fact, they're not important at all. What's important is what the archetype represents.
Yes.
That's what you're supposed to focus on.
They're delivering an idea here.
And that's why stories, either mythopoetic stories or even fairy tales, are often, they have that sort of charming, surreal feel to them, because the details and the logic don't always make a lot of sense, because that's not what the story, that's not the vehicle through which the story delivers what it's trying to say to you. It delivers it to you through symbols and archetypes. And I feel like that's what this game does more so than almost any game I've played.
Yeah.
It's structured in that same way.
it can be striking to all of a sudden show up and these crazy things have happened and to be like, how did this happen? But fairy tales are told from a non-cinematic point of view.
Yeah.
I feel like this is an interesting thing that's mostly happened probably in the last 100 years. But our collective imaginations as humans has changed into this very visually centered, like there are scenes with the way we dream, even everything kind of harkens back to the way that movies are shown to us. And that's why a lot of these old fairy tales, very popular fairy tales, we don't understand them anymore because the way that they're told, often things will happen in these fairy tales that you can't imagine. Like you can't, they say it because it's important to get the idea into your mind in an abstract way. Fairy tales are super good for kids because it gets them thinking about, like, in the wildest way, like, how is this even possible? But, when you try to show it on a movie, it's like, how do you depict this? And obviously, like a lot of biblical stuff, or even the Iliad or the Odyssey, we've talked, like you mentioned in the first episode, a lot of ancient accounts. It's like, this is not you cannot show
not
this
adaptable.
in a movie. Yeah, it's almost not adaptable. You would have to do so many weird things to get this to become adaptable all of a sudden. Like they'll deal with, a giant that is, here's one. How would you show this in a movie? There's an old Russian fairy tale. It's beautiful. It's called West of the Sun and East of the Moon. And there is a land, and then there's this like sage kind of wizard that says, oh, in order to go there, you must travel 1 mile west of the sun and 1 mile east of the moon. There is a land, and in the land there's a pond, and in the pond there's an island, and on the island there's a castle, and in the castle there's a bird, and in the bird there's an egg, and in the egg, and it keeps on going. There's like layers of fractals going in and out. But a mile west of the sun and a mile east of the moon, it lies a land.
Yeah.
Or there's another one that's called the land where the sun goes at night, right? And it's like, how do you show that? How does a movie ever get up and be like, okay, here we are, because of our, not only the scientific worldview that we have now, but also just like, this isn't how people used to think. And we just can't even wrap our heads around it anymore today.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
that's a great point.
And then when they bring these things into the game,
like you say,
it feels weird
cinematically.
Exactly.
With film being such a formative part of all of our lives.
Yeah, basically everyone.
We basically think of stories visually, like what would this look like in a movie in my brain. When I read novels, that's what I'm doing.
But that's a constraint on children's imaginations to always be like, oh, well, how like you would only think in terms of what's technically possible within the confines of the medium.
Yeah.
Instead of what could your mind come up with if you didn't have those boundaries there.
Right.
And those old fairy tales bring out some wild stuff that your child mind has to like figure out an imaginative way of grasping it. And it's super fun.
Yeah.
But gosh, man, like I do the same thing. I'm reading a book and I'm like, how would this look in a movie? I can't help but do that. And it's very difficult for me to imagine. But, you can eventually break free of it, I hope. I hope.
If you stop watching movies and meditate hard enough.
hard enough. But just imagine, nobody thought this way before 100 years ago.
Yeah.
The first time, who is it, like D.W. Griffiths, or which early director was the first one to do a cut in a movie? Yeah. I can't remember who it was, but it was like 1910 or something. And it was like, here's a cut to a close-up. And like, dude, the audience freaking lost their mind. They were like, what? They were disoriented. They were disheveled. It didn't make sense to them. Like, what am I saying? A cut? What are you doing? This doesn't make sense, right? And now it's the only way that we can imagine things now. That's all we can do is just imagine cut to this, cut to this, cut to this.
Yeah. Especially since
just a different way
it's basically all I do every single day in my job
is editing.
Cut,
me too.
Cut. So we got the king of the kingbirds here.
Yep.
He's too big to fly, it looks
he's
like.
So funny. I love him. Oh, he's so jacked.
Indeed, I am the king of kingbirds. You returned us to our original forms. I thank you sincerely.
He's like coughing and hiccuping all the time. His like eyes get big and he's just so messed up.
It is good that everything is back to the way it was. I wish I could say that, but it isn't true. Yeah. Close by, there's a cavern called Windvale. Wind from it in the spring tells us we must fly to new lands. But this year the wind has not blown. We are concerned. Where's Windvale? You should go down, speak to the gull below. I love these scenes where the gulls fly you to different places in the world.
You can go, there's 3 different ones, and they'll take you to different places.
Yeah.
Did you do all 3 of them?
I did. I love it.
The one that takes you, it was so disappointing to go to Japan and to realize
Tokyo, and
there's nothing there.
To do there.
Like, oh, come on, man. I'm guessing, so everyone knows, it might be relevant later.
Yeah.
But it's cool that you can go there, and then there's Africa. And anyways, you end up going to a place called Safarium.
Yeah.
But first Windvale.
Windvale
but first Windvale.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I just love those scenes. Again, similarly to how I feel about the game's pause menu system and the way it handles items and equipment, you have to go into the box and navigate through the box.
You
to
can't
the places.
be in too much of a hurry.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same way with this. They certainly could have made a faster way to get me to where I want to go instead of having these long scenes of this bird flying you around. But again, it's in those quiet moments.
Yeah, just flying over the ocean.
Beauty of landscapes, of nature, that you're meant to become connected to and bonded with this cycle of the Earth's life. Yeah. And seeing those grand scales and landscapes and flying above them. I know that you have talked about feeling nervous on airplanes and things like that.
Yes. Yeah.
I have always loved flying, and I love that view of the Earth from the sky. I love to get window seats and to look out at the world from that point of view. There's something very magical about that experience for me, regardless of how often I have traveled and how much I've flown. Whether it's over oceans, whether it's over mountains and rivers and cities, and seeing things at a very different point of view. And so these little moments of these birds flying around, and I love how he's held in a little knapsack.
I love his head's poking out. Yeah, and he's in this little sack. It's adorable.
Like a stork, carrying him around or something like that.
He's a little baby.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious and just totally charming. So I freaking love that.
Oh, and I forgot to mention too that at least underground, I think this is the case above ground too. When you're traveling on the world map, he's holding a knapsack behind him. He's got a stick with a little sack. I
freaking love that.
It's so funny.
It's the archetype of going out on an adventure.
Yes, exactly.
Because
you take the few things you need.
A long time ago, someone who didn't have a lot might pack what little food they have.
Tie it to a stick.
They're going to go on a journey for a couple of days. They just tie that to a stick and they kind of carry that over their shoulder. Yeah. That's like an archetype of sorts for the idea of leaving on a journey somewhere, and there's something just so fun about that image of Ark running around with a little knapsack over his shoulder.
I love it. They took such care with the visual presentation of this game. It's so cool.
It's fantastic. Yeah. So I loved this. When you get to Windvale, you go to this just giant freaking pit, basically.
Yeah. There's a little
blackness.
Glimmer at the bottom.
And you have to throw rocks down inside of it. It's almost like you're waking something up by throwing rocks on its head.
Once again, deep underground.
Deep underground. Important that it is from deep underground. Yep. But I love that it says a deep voice whispered in Ark's ear. Cool. This isn't a voice coming from down below. Hey, who woke me up? Yeah. This is a whisper from right next to him, almost in his head, so to speak.
Yes, this is very interesting.
I imagined a little bit like the voices in Hellblade or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Floating around you.
Yeah, like
and
the
you're not sure where it's at, and it's if I were to remake Terranigma, I might try that out to see how that feels. Like a binaural sort of sound for this wind's spirit to come and sort of talk to you. And it's whispering right next to your ear. Who is arousing me from my sleep? What? I hear the calling of birds. I sense the fragrance of spring. I understand. The long, harsh winter is over.
This is what I was
I know not who you might be, but I thank you for waking me. I shall get to work immediately. And so now the birds can go where they need to go. The wind is returned.
The winter's over.
The migrators can take off to new lands, spread across the world,
just like the plans.
Propagate, right? As a show of appreciation, please accept this. You get the wind pin. If you develop an abnormality, summon birds with this to cure you. And then the goal takes you to Africa, Safarium. This begins our next resurrection sequence, the animals of the Safarium. And I already mentioned this, but the goal, what happened here, Ark? There used to be countless animals. What's the simple rhino or Simon, Kameski, the slow turtle, Neo the Lion King. So he has memories of these things from the past cycle, right?
And particular memories of particular animals.
Yes.
Which kind of does ruin my idea that this is just an archetypal thing. there's a mixture between the archetypal bird and a real particular bird that lived at a particular time and had particular friends.
Both things.
It's both at once. Yeah. Which
really
is
interesting.
Which is bridging the gap between what I mentioned before, the one and the many. Right, the archetype, which is like this singular idea, and then the many instantiations of it. Right, there's a bridge in between the two. Which is in some ways actually what Adam Kadmon is. I'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
And that what the role Ark is playing. He's kind of like a bridge between these two forces.
Right. Now, this next line I thought was hilarious, so I took a picture of it.
I did some research
and I sent it as a tweet on X. Sigh. No one cares about art no more.
That's so funny.
Now, I know that you had mentioned you wanted to talk about this. So.
Yes, I looked this up. So, first off, this is one of the difficulties of, you're learning, or you were at least a while ago learning some Japanese. One of the questions I had when I started learning Japanese is, why don't they just use hiragana for everything? Why freaking bother with kanji, right? Just why, or katakana. You have all of your syllables set. It's all here. Just use hiragana. That's more or less what Korea does with Hangul. They don't use hanja. They call them hanja. They don't use them very much. They do sometimes, but it's way less common than in Japan. Of course, Japan's less common than China. But this is one of those times that kind of illustrates why it might be important to use kanji and not hiragana. Now, I have some suspicions that this was mistranslated, and I looked up how I think the translator may have thought it was to be translated. It's entirely possible he translated it right and then just took some liberties and said, I'm going to write this instead. But there's a thing here, right? So ga is a particle in Japanese. So this is what it says. It says, sechi, this is how I read it when I first looked at it, because it wasn't using kanji. These were actually written in hiragana. At least this first part was in the game. Sechi ga rai, yo no naka de yansune. So when you read sechi ga rai, it's something is something, that kind of sentence there. You get a very different reading than what it actually is with the kanji, which is sechigarai. It's one word, sechigarai. It's not sechigarai, it's sechigarai. That's one single word. And it means like the trouble of, let me just read this. Like cruel, here it is. What a cruel world we live in. That's what it says. Isn't that right? Question mark. Something like that. Oh, we live in this cruel world, huh? It's an old way of speaking. It uses a kansai, that ending part, right? Yansune. It's just said in what today would be seen as kind of a weird way of talking, which is why the nobody don't care about art no more. That's why he translated in that way, because
the parlance is different.
Yes, it's just a different parlance that's older, but it's not necessarily rude. I just want to make sure that's clear. But the beginning part, to be sechigarai, yo no naka de, that means inside this world there's cruelty. And he's tortured. He's talking about how tortured he is. I don't think that it's a total mistranslation error, but it is weird when you're reading the hiragana without the kanji to kind of, it doesn't flow as easily, and you end up maybe even wondering if that ga was a particle or not. Like, why is the ga there? Because that's how I read it at first. Sechi ga rai. Oh, interesting. Well, what does that even mean? But that's just breakdown. There you go. There's your Japanese breakdown for the sentence. It basically just means we live in a cruel world. Isn't that right? Something like that. It's said in what used to be a long time ago considered a form of speech that is now looked at as archaic. And that got translated into people don't care about art no more, or whatever he said.
No one cares about art no more.
And I guess it's just the world is cruel. It is a cruel world that doesn't value art. So that's where I'm going to have to land on there. But it is quite different in the Japanese.
That's very interesting.
Quite different.
It makes a lot more sense for it to be more that we live in a cruel world off the back of him missing his friends. Right? Where are all my friends? Oh, exactly. What a cruel world we live in. They're gone.
What a cruel world.
That would make more sense, a lot more sense, than this totally random tangent about art, the degradation of the value of art.
And nobody appreciates it. It's so funny. Although maybe he's assuming, well, no, because often the translators weren't even playing the game. But he could be assuming that people were upset that the flight took so long. And then it's like, y'all don't care about art, because the whole length of that flight was about what you mentioned. Showing off the artistic beauty of the world.
I see what you're talking about. No one cares about the beauty of our long cutscenes that you can't skip.
Yeah, but I doubt it.
Like
that would be a little too
meta.
Yeah. I think he was just being funny with it.
So Zu, or Zue maybe, is the next dungeon where you're awaking the animals. This dungeon is set up in a pretty interesting way. So There are essentially 4 altars that you encounter. There are 4 spirits, and at each one you kind of need to like. There's an enemy in that area that you would destroy, and like the spirit would be sort of kind of like we've been doing before.
Yeah.
You're rescuing a spirit from its mindless form,
and then it tells you to find the rain altar.
Then you can go to the altar and like sort of revive the land in the vicinity of that altar.
Right. So apparently the greenness covering the world has not yet reached this part.
Something's preventing it.
Yeah. There are plants. It's just different.
Yeah, and it's usually a rain or a storm that comes in like water, sort of fills up what were like empty, in Africa during their dry seasons. The riverbeds are totally emptied or whatever.
That's right.
So it's kind of that visual or that idea. And then the rains come, they fill them up. That gives you an access to previously an area you couldn't reach before. You go into the next one, go to the next altar, and all, so on and so forth until the end. The altars are interesting in sort of their construction. There's some symbols going on there. So my note was that I was curious to see what you would take from them. They are symmetrical.
Yep.
So you have staircase on the right and left side. You have these 2 cauldrons or containers that look like they hold some kind of boiling lava or something.
Yeah, some orange liquid.
They're sort of situated in these pools of mud, what looks like mud to me. There's a staircase in the center that sort of leads into what looks like an inner sanctum of some kind, or a, what would you call that? The Holy of Holies in the Jewish temple. And there are skulls on either side that suggest that sacrifices are made at these altars. Yes. There's also a symbol on the ground in the foreground where Ark is standing that is similar to the banner at the top. Well, there's sort of a blue banner or flag or something
with gold patterns,
and it seems to be representing the boss monster that is summoned at the end of the dungeon there. And in the final one where they actually summon it, there are 4, just like there were 4 spirits. There are 4 monsters praying at this altar or worshiping at this altar with some kind of cult leader or someone conducting the ceremony on kind of the stairs that lead into the inner sanctum, and they are the ones who seem to summon this deity, this god, to come and fight you. Now, in regards to monsters and their nature in this world, the fact that they seem to be the spirits of living, the unconscious spirits of living things. And we slay them to release the conscious spirit back into the world. It was just interesting to me that monsters here are not depicted like they are anywhere else.
Right, no,
where
it's
they
very
are
strange.
Mindless
like just demon
enemies to slay. Here they appear to have a culture and a religion and intelligence that is far beyond what has been previously suggested. And I didn't know what to make of that, really.
I still don't. But I have a similar read. So there are 4 altars, right? 4 rain altars.
Yeah.
And there are 4 people worshiping at the 4th altar. And there's the one. Remember I talked to you before about the symbolism of 5, right? So the symbolism of 4 is just the earth as it is.
Of the earth,
But that 5th one adds in that 5th element, which is the spirit. And what we are seeing here is the maybe negative version of that.
Oh,
which
that's
is
great.
He's conducting the thing, right? So the 4, he's controlling the elements, he's controlling the baser nature of the animals in his own way. Now he would have to be conscious to do this, I think, maybe not. But and then he is kind of using their power to direct and conduct the earth in this occult kind of way.
Very interesting. I like that. I think you just unlocked it in my brain.
Oh, good.
The idea that this is essentially the inverse, or maybe was at one point, the exact inverse ritual of what we just did in the underworld.
Yes.
So,
and I have one hint for why that might be
the case. Ritual in the underworld required 5 towers, 5 entrances to that room of resurrection. And like you said, a head, an intelligence at the sort of root of that ceremony to resurrect the earth or begin its cycle of life again.
To command the elements, to tell them what to do, to give them purpose.
You could imagine that such a ritual might have happened at the end of its cycle that put it into the state of sleep or in darkness or whatever. And perhaps this was the creature that accomplished the inverse of what Ark is doing. And so in order to bring back life, to bring back the earth, to fully resurrect it, you have to defeat the thing that had ended life in the first place.
That's pretty cool.
That would be interesting if that was kind of what these altars represented on this side, in the upper world.
Yeah.
Maybe just the inverse of what those tower rooms were in the underworld.
I have very similar thoughts. I think you're on the same wavelength there. One of the cool things about these altars is that they bring rain, right? So this is commanding the elements. This is what it is. There are the four elements, and they're at the command of this one, this unity that I would say it's a false unity, but he's just kind of conducting people in this ritualistic, sacrificial, this whole scene. It's pretty wild. But there's something else that this whole thing actually means. Well, first off, before we get off of what you were talking about, that flag has at its center a red.
Yeah, it's like a ruby.
And this is what got me thinking about, the dualism, the blue orb. There's got to be a red orb. I think they worship the red orb.
Sun.
Yes, exactly. Then that's where I was like, what's the red orb? I don't remember seeing a red orb throughout any part in this game. But I could be wrong. They could be there. I just don't remember it at the moment. But I'm thinking, well, it's just got to be the sun then. It's just got to be the sun itself. And that the center of their worship is the sun. But then, of course, this is the coolest part. Those temples down underground, those towers, that room had the pentagon, and at the head of it was that angel-looking figure.
Right.
That's in that banner.
Yes.
Yeah, you see basically like a winged angel with a halo or a blue orb floating above it, right? You see the exact same thing that we saw in that the five towers down below. It just etched out in this flag, except at the center of it is this red orb, and at the top it shows it could be a halo, it could be the blue orb or something like that. But it's very reminiscent of that ritual. I think you are meant to see that, but you're meant to see it in a baser earth way without a proper fifth, right? They have a false fifth. They have one of the blind mice leading the other blind mice in a false fifth one, which is leading to ritual sacrifice and all that stuff. Whereas the proper fifth, to actually bring in a new element here instead of just letting the four continue governing themselves, is Ark showing up there, exercising the whole thing and putting an end to the whole ritual. But this is what that thing, I believe, I looked at it for so long because you brought this up 2 days ago. You were like, what is, give me your thoughts. I want your thoughts on the symbolism of the temple. And I'm like, I didn't really have anything at the time. I've looked at it for so long now that first off, it's a face. So you mentioned it's symmetrical. You see a face. It kind of looks like a monkey face.
Oh, so like the cauldrons would be the eyes.
Yeah, the cauldrons are the eyes looking up. You have the ears with the staircases. You have even where we're standing is like the mouth. It looks like the face of a monkey. But it also looks like the temple from Indiana Jones 2, the Temple of Doom, where they perform ritual sacrifice on the person. They pull out his heart and feed him. This is the craziest thing. Guys, go back and watch that scene from Indiana Jones to the Temple of Doom, and you will see something very similar to what we just saw here. You will see these worshipers being fanatic. You'll see kind of like a gulf in between where most of the audience stands and then the people performing the ritual, which is a gulf of fire. It's just like a red glow. I don't know. I think it's supposed to be fire. Then you will see this this skull thing holding out like two scales on either side. You will see lots of skulls on either side. You will see, this is the part that sold it for me because I was like, this looks very similar. I think this is a direct call out to Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, but I can't remember. I didn't want to make that leap completely until the platform we're on begins to descend downward.
Yeah.
This happens in that movie. And it descends down towards the fire and lava underneath, right? And that's exactly what's happening. As we're going down, it starts getting redder and warmer as if we're approaching some heat or something down below. Right. This, I believe, The symbolism all still applies, but I mostly believe now that this was a call out to Indiana Jones.
They liked the movie.
They liked the movie, and so they wanted to throw that ritual in here somehow.
That's funny.
It's pretty funny.
Oh, I skipped a couple things.
Oh, yeah, because
Ark
says, I feel an enormous power.
Yeah, so when you go to the first altar, so before we get to the boss, what I feel an enormous power. And
blue
then, wow,
dust
plants have returned to the barren land. Green is a really soothing color. You can sleep on it, and it can feed animals.
Yeah.
Food? That's it. Animals can't return because there isn't any grass for food. When more plants appear, animals should reemerge, like the gull mentioned. I should meet Simple Simon the Rhino, Comeski the Slow Turtle, and Neo the Lion, the king of all animals.
I love his logic there, too.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking, he's like, you got to have, once the grass is there, the animals will just show up.
Yes.
And he's right.
And what does he need to get the green to come back? He needs rain.
Rain, yes.
And there's a storm master as the boss blocking that from happening.
Right. That's right. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So he has to defeat the storm master to allow the rains to come, grass to come back, and then animals to feed on the grass. Yeah. So some kind of weather god, right? Now, there's something really, well, I took this note. This weather gods, that's something that a lot of ancient cultures would pray to and make their sacrifices to, right?
The most popular one because especially in an agrarian society, rain is
you need the rain.
Very important.
Yeah. Interestingly, he has 6 sort of like bone claw things coming out of his back. They look a little wing-like.
Yes.
There were 2 additional little bone claws that he would sort of swing and throw at you that I didn't understand what those were in the first phase of the boss.
Okay, tell me more about your thoughts of the second phase, because I couldn't figure that one out.
You beat the first phase. Oh, I also noticed this. Hold on, there's a couple more things. There's a spiral bone structure coming out of his left eye.
That's right, he only has one eye.
And going up his head like this.
Yeah,
and
like a
in
cone.
the banner, the head is represented with an eye. So it's just an eyeball
one eye,
representing the head of this creature. And I noticed he only has one eye because this bone thing is growing out of the other eye and like up on top of its skull.
Right.
It's having one eye might be that eye that was used to represent in the image, the banner. So the boss's second form has a head below the torso. So this is also a really cool dualism symbol. We are seeing the top half of the boss in the first fight, and in the second fight we're seeing the bottom half of the boss. So what was the spine that led to the head in the first form? The head is removed at the end of that, but that becomes the tail of the second part.
Yeah, that's right.
And those 2 bone things that he was throwing at us that I couldn't figure out what they were, they're like, the claws or hands in the second form.
This reminds me of Final Fantasy X.
The wings sort of become the legs.
Oh, yeah.
Almost spider-like in the second form. I guess they could still be wings in another sense because it does look dragon-like.
Yes, it does.
Like the skull and like the long spine neck kind of coming out to it. It looks more dragon-like, more bestial in the second form, where it looked more humanoid in the first form. And so that was really interesting. Again, sort of a top and bottom, above and below, a dualism.
2 faces,
to this fight. So I was confused why it's humanoid when you're resurrecting animals. You're not resurrecting humanity yet.
Right, me too.
But it's bestial on the second half. Right. So I thought that was really interesting.
So it's almost like, okay, so then I've got it then. These beings, these demons, are necromancers, more or less, right? They're trying to resurrect the human to lead them, but it's just this bone thing that can't, well, I guess it can sort of block stuff, but it seems that they've just brought up something that has not yet been cleansed. It hasn't been exorcised, and it's exerting its power in its own way, I guess, in less of a, not at one with the other powers at work here, of which Ark is one.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, we're not on the same page here. You got to go.
You guys aren't doing this right.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting.
Very interesting.
But this is the resurrection of animals. So Ark, I've waited long for this moment. Mammals changed into monsters should regain their forms. But remember this, still too early for the world to be resurrected. You must lead the growth of living things. And this resurrection scene depicts a close-up of what looks like a cell.
This was cool.
Possibly a zygote or zygotes.
Okay.
So reproductive cells,
that's
right?
right. Yeah. And then a million.
There's like a heartbeat that you hear kind of behind it. We then see a savanna landscape where silhouetted animals are kind of walking across the African safari in the distance as the sun rises. Yeah. Really beautiful.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
My next note is, what? You're human? Illogical.
It's so funny.
In my 7-day, 4-hour study, no humans should have appeared yet. So this monkey
you can ask him his theory, too.
This monkey's like the scientist of the animal kingdom. They have a couple other mentions of go talk to him. He's like conducting studies about this or that or whatever.
I thought he was a bird.
He's like a little white monkey.
Couldn't tell.
Little white monkey. And
That's funny.
Yeah, but illogical. You should not be here yet, right? It's not time for humans to come.
Yeah.
I thought that was really funny. But the Lion King, what was his name again?
Leo.
His son Liam is out on a quest, a test to see if he is worthy of being the next king. He has to go alone. They go as cubs, and if they survive the test, they come back from that, then they can become the next king. Yeah. Liam's mother is very worried and unhappy, and
she's against
please go check on my son and make sure he's okay.
She doesn't like that the king puts the prince through such difficulties.
But the king insists, no, he must do this.
He must. What I love, too, is when you first go in to see the lions, they are saying, what, a human? Like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why is there a human here? The same thing that we had just heard before. What? Human? Illogical, right? From the monkey. And what I love about this, first off, illogical, like having 13 hours on a clock, like that kind of thing. The other thing I look at is one lion says, no human should be among us. So combining the monkey saying illogical and the other lion saying no human should be here. And then we read the other lion's response to when he says no human should be here. It says, that's not important. He's right here in front of us. Often, it's not important what you think should be there. It's more important what
actually
is there.
Yeah.
And so, the monkey there would rather trust his textbooks than his eyes, right? It's like what you see is what's here, right? Whereas the monkey didn't get it. Like, I don't understand. He has to develop a theory to figure it out. Whereas the lions are just like, you shouldn't be here. But you are, and we're going to eat you now, right? Like, just maybe having a less high intellectual reaction and a more like you're here, let's do it. You shouldn't be here, but we don't care. We believe our eyes before the textbooks. Anyways, it's really interesting. Yeah. I love that line.
It's good stuff. I love this whole section with Liam where
this section is awesome. It's probably my favorite part of this.
Save him from the monsters and you have to it's like kind of an escort mission.
Well, and yes, it is. Except sometimes he runs ahead. He's like, you're going too slow. I'm going to go fast.
I love that he calls you big guy. Hey, big guy. You're too slow, big guy.
And every now and then
race.
He'll say something like, if tests were this fun, I'd do it every day or something like that. It's just really funny. He starts having fun with it.
I love the music. Dun 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 dun, and you're like walking with him and like killing the monsters that try to attack him and stuff, climbing up. He races you up and he's like, first one up.
That's right.
You're like trying to climb up.
He's way too
slow,
fast.
big guy.
Way too fast. Oh, and there are a few times, which is kind of frustrating, but not a big deal, where you're following him. He follows you for a part of it, but you follow him for a part of it, and he goes the wrong way, and he's like, "Whoops, nope, not this way." And you're like, "What?" He goes back on a retread, and it's just funny.
It's great stuff, but this leads up to the pinnacle of the test, which is a mud doll kind of final boss. In the fight, Liam will bring you boulders and drop them down, and then you pick them up and you throw them at the
mud monster. Yeah,
and what he says first is, "Nice of you to visit. I don't get guests often. Let's party.
Okay, this is FF6, the funny octopus guy. What?
Ultros.
Ultros.
Yeah.
This is straight up Ultros. This character, just straight up Ultros. So much fun. Yeah,
Let's
and I love
party.
It. At some point, he's like, "Oh, you got me. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Here,
So
let me build a bridge
when
for you."
you defeat him, what? I'm sorry. You courageous souls facing the test, it was low of me to try taking advantage of your inexperience. I swear to behave from now on. I've got a gift to prove it here. So this is interesting, and I kick myself a little bit for not testing this. Yeah. According to all of the FAQs and walkthroughs that I've read, there is no choice but to approach the mud doll and like. But I would have figured this would be one of those places where you get a choice because Liam goes and gets an extra boulder and brings it and drops it next to you.
Yeah, you
and so my thought was I could have picked that up and thrown it at him, and maybe the scene would have gone differently.
Actually, so the entire future of the world would have gone differently.
I don't know if it does. If there's anybody out there who has played that part and chose to try to throw it at him, does he have an extra line of dialogue? Say, oh, no, promise for real. I'm not going to hurt you. Please don't throw anymore.
I wonder.
And then you're just sort of forced in order to trigger it because it wouldn't make any sense for it to go a different way. Liam is supposed to overcome this challenge on his own.
Yes, exactly.
That's what's supposed to happen. But I, like probably most others, just walked up and you know, he tricks you, laughs in your face. What does he say?
You fell
fool, gullibly innocent fools like you are what sustain us. Goodbye forever. And then you fall down, the bridge collapses, and you hear the sounds of Liam up top fighting. And
it's so fun. I love how they did this.
Yeah, and so you're like, you walking back and forth. You're like, no, Liam. But Liam defeats him. And you hear the doll again being like, no, I promise to behave. And Liam doesn't buy it.
He kills
him.
Yeah, that's what I interpreted that,
and then a stone falls down to where Ark is at. Liam comes down, hey, what's this? What's this stone? Did that monster have this? But it's a beautiful stone. It's clear and shining vividly. And Ark says, you should take it as a keepsake of the test. I'll do that. I'll use it as a charm for courage and danger. And we never see this stone again. I'm being sarcastic. It's important. Keep it in mind for later.
Very nice, very nice, very nice.
Yeah, loved this whole scene. Is super fun, super charming, hilarious. Liam overcomes the challenge on his own. I think you had some notes on like the nature of these types of ancient tests and challenges.
Yeah, these types of tests.
Yeah.
They're important. So I mostly took note of this because it seemed like what they were setting up was this, that the mother wants this silly old ritual to stop, and this lion king is like, no, the old ways must be preserved. And it seemed like they're setting up a tension for which the king lion was going to have to give way, at least in modern media. That's how it always has to go. And they didn't do that. And I was shocked. I was like, whoa. I
have a little bit of a different perspective.
You do? Okay, tell me.
I think you're right in the general sense, but there is the fact that Ark intervened and helped to some degree.
You're right.
So he wasn't totally alone.
Yes.
He did have to overcome the ultimate challenge alone.
Which makes me think
he was allowed to have some support throughout the challenge.
I have a whole reading on this. I'm not saying he would have made it otherwise. I'm saying he had to make it otherwise. Yeah, this isn't just to live, although there is that one line that seemed a bit harsh. The little lion says, my dad says it's meaningless to live if you can't pass this test.
Yes.
Now, I don't agree with that line. That is a harsh line.
It's too far.
However, this isn't somebody who is just trying to live a normal life as a follower of some other king. This is the next ruler of animals. This is the next king of all of the animals. You don't want a weak king.
Yes.
Weak kings are way more dangerous than strong kings. So the way that this goes, Neo, it's Leo, right? No, is it Neo?
Liam.
No, Neo's the lion. I said Leo, but it's Neo.
Oh, sorry. Neo.
It's Neo.
Is the Lion King.
That. Yeah, that's my fault.
With an N, like the Matrix.
Like the Matrix, yes. Although this was before the Matrix.
Yes.
So Neo stubbornly refuses to call off the ritual. However, for a king Do you want a king who can't survive on his own to lead you? I know it's rough, but rituals like these do serve a purpose. So I would say it's not meaningless to live if you can't pass the test, but it would be difficult for the other animals to trust you becoming king if you can't pass this test. It's meaningless to rule over others if you cannot pass a test like that. Something like that, maybe, is what I'm going for. Meaningless to live as a king if you cannot pass that test.
Yes.
And for a lion who is to inherit the throne soon, that's what he'll be doing. For a prince, surviving means ruling. That's what if you're a prince, living long enough means being the ruler over potentially millions of people, right? This reminds me of a bird trying to break out of its shell. Helping it means killing it. Now, you did bring up the caveat that Ark helps him. We help Liam.
So the mother sends Ark to help. If we had not arrived there, it's very possible he would have been killed by those monsters.
Yeah, entirely possible. Yeah.
At the same time.
In which case, a different lion would have been
in order for him to become strong enough to succeed his father, he definitely needed to fight that mud doll on his own.
At the very least, something like that.
So there's a little bit of a marriage of these two things. It's like if he had no support, he certainly would have died. But he also needed to have that opportunity where there is no help.
Right.
And we talked about this a little bit in our analysis of The Neverending Story.
Yeah.
I talked a little bit about
Wizard of Oz, right?
The Wizard of Oz and at least the novel version of Fellowship of the Ring with Tom Bombadil.
Tom,
In The Wizard of Oz, there's a scene where the Wicked Witch had like sort of put a sleeping spell over this flower field.
The field, yeah.
And as the characters are passing through it, they fall asleep, and then the monkeys are flying out to get them.
Yeah.
And the beautiful witch, the good witch, just sort of pops up and says, "Wake up, everyone," and just solves the problem. And
the book goes a little different. Frank Baum's book, but
sure. But the point that I was trying to make there with like Atreyu being saved in the Swamps of Sadness by Falkor just popping out of nowhere,
like almost Deus
a god from the machine, Deus Ex Machina arrives to pick him up and save him. Something you would have never expected, had never been set up yet in the story, is something I would have traditionally said, I don't like that. You need to like set up something like that. You don't just pop it out of nowhere. That feels a little cheap as a resolution to a big problem. But what I noticed in all three of these stories is that in the early part of the quest, in the infancy, if you look at the quest as a character itself, in the quest's infancy is when these types of miraculous, as Tolkien termed it, the eucatastrophe happens.
Yeah.
But at a point late in the quest, in the maturity of the quest, the hero must face the thing alone with no support.
Okay.
And so that's kind of like what this little side quest, or it's not really side quest, main quest, but little sub-story is. In the beginning parts of the test, Ark needed to be there to give support to Liam, to give him courage,
confidence,
to give him confidence, to give him a role model, to show him how to be strong.
Exactly, to guide him.
He notices how he fights. Wow, big guy, you're really strong.
Right.
And at the end, that support had to be taken away, and he then had to prove his strength.
Well, you bring up an interesting point with that, because Neo, his father, they go through great pains throughout the dialogue here to tell you that Neo is old. You hear it from several other animals as well. Neo's getting old, and when you first talk to him, he like coughs, like anyways, hey, I can't remember what he says, but he coughs first. That's what I remember. He's not in good health, and it's possible that Liam did not learn these from his father because his father was maybe too old or not in proper health to teach these to him. So he needed a different role model to help raise him up. So the father wasn't able to instill in him the confidence and courage because he's just really old. But we were able to do that.
Yeah.
There's also another sense in which, and this is a few points throughout the game, you'll be able to notice something like this, but it's almost when the mother is asking Ark to help her son, there's almost a sense in which this is kind of like a prayer that she is giving to the guiding spirit of the earth or something like that. Just like a general, like, oh, somebody help guide my son through the trials that he's undergoing. This also harkens a lot to what I'm going to be talking about probably next episode. Hegel's philosophy on world history is something akin to what's more or less happening here. That Ark is a person, he is a human, but he represents something not just entirely only human necessarily. And this is probably a good enough time for me to bring up the Adam Kadmon part here. Adam Kadmon is often referred to as the primordial human, and as such represents the divine blueprint or archetype of all creation. It's not a physical being necessarily. Adam Kadmon isn't. Ark is. I'm going to argue.
Yes.
But is a unified essence that contains the potential for all existence, not just humans. Everything leading up to humans as well, of which humans are essentially the pinnacle, at least in the Jewish Kabbalah, scriptures. So do they call them scriptures? The works.
Let's call it the
texts.
What is that worldview? Worldview. That's a synonym to the word I'm looking for that I can't find at the moment.
So this also, by the way, just in saying something, something that's a unified essence that contains the potential for all existence. That sounds a bit like Noah's Ark, right? It's this unified potential that contains in it the possibility for everything, all of the animals, all that stuff, right? All the seeds. Adam Kadmon in Kabbalah symbolizes the unity of all creation before it's divided into distinct forms. Similarly, Ark's existence in this scene might reflect a transitional state where humanity, while not yet fully realized, is present in its archetypal form. Adam Kadmon is also associated with the divine act of creation itself, serving as a conduit for the unfolding of the universe. And Ark's journey mirrors this role as he is tasked with the resurrecting and restoring of the world, acting as a bridge between the divine and the material, right? And that is what Adam Kadmon is with Ein Sof, right? The endless kind of unity, and then everything else,
the monad,
the monad
of the
exactly.
Kabbalah, yeah.
And then the animal's confusion about Ark's presence highlights the liminal nature of his role. He is both part of the world he is restoring and yet distinct from it. This duality aligns with the idea of Adam Kadmon as a being that exists both within and, in some ways, beyond creation, embodying the potential for all life. Now think of what it means for a mother to ask Ark to help her son that is far away and going through troubles. It's not just a simple favor. This is almost a plea to, in some ways, what is kind of the architect of this world.
Yeah.
As silly as Ark seems, he
That's
imagined
true. He's kind of the god of
resurrected
of this world.
Oh yeah, and then now think of that voice that Ark keeps hearing in his mind. Guide creation, lead all of creation, and this is how he's going to go about it. He is leading. He is the force that shows up that then leads the creation into the way that it should go. He's almost like he almost exercises this. We're going to talk about this soon with the ice mountain, but this like moral leadership as well, and this ethical governance. He's not just a silly dude walking around bumbling into miraculously resurrecting all of life on a planet. He is taking part in this process, and he is recognized as essentially kind of the pinnacle, the point, where everything is going, right? The archetypal human.
So this final dungeon here of chapter 2, Eklamata. I really tried hard to find if that word means something. I have no idea if it's a reference to something.
Why didn't I even think of that?
If it's a reference that is spelled wrong because of the character limit, and I just don't know. Like my search doesn't work because I'm putting this search term in, but that's not really what the word means. I have no idea, but I have no idea what Eklamata means.
I don't either. I don't think I do. I'll look into it. We'll see. It seems Greek.
As purposeful as everything in this game seems to be, it struck me that probably is purposeful, but I just have no idea. I mean, mata, that kind of sounds Japanese. I don't know. Is there maybe some literal sort of like phonetic thing
Mata
going
means
on
again. What was it again?
But there's an L in there, so it's definitely not.
Ekuramata. Yeah, I can't get you anywhere.
Yeah,
mata means like later or again.
Anyways. So Yetis are a monster type in this place. This is kind of a snowy ice sort of area.
Yeah.
And Yetis are the monsters, or one of the sets of monsters you find here. I think that Yetis represent the monster form of the human souls.
I was wondering this too. I'm like, humans don't exist, but these Yetis certainly look human-like.
Yeah, because...
Well, the last boss is interesting in this regard.
Yeah, but what's interesting is Yeti is a free beast. It can become a foe or a friend.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Is what you learn from the soul here, right?
Yeah.
And they won't attack you. You can just walk right past them.
Right.
If you do attack them, they'll fight back. And so there's a certain level of free will attributed to Yetis. And since this is the point in which we are resurrecting human beings, I took that to be these are the unconscious, like we're talking about, sort of shell for the human souls that we are meant to restore here. So
they have some attributes, but they're not there yet, yeah.
Right. But that's the connection that I think is happening there. I didn't take too many notes until the goat scene. Do you have something before that?
Jeez.
Because that's a big one.
No, it's just the goat. I start off at the goat because it's just the line, in the darkness, warmth brings back memories.
Yeah.
I have nothing before that.
So later on, as you're going through this area, there's an avalanche that overwhelms Ark, buries him deep in an ice cave. And you wake up, and once again it says how much time has passed.
Yes, yeah, who knows, who knows.
And there's a mountain goat there.
Yep.
Explains that her husband died.
Yeah, he must have fallen awkwardly.
So you kind of go up and follow the goat, and she walks over to the corpse of the other dead goat.
Yeah.
That's my husband. He's no longer breathing. He must have landed awkwardly. There's no telling fate. Just a while ago, we were running the slopes. It's too late for tears. We should look for a way out. So a very, I don't know what you would call this, but I think it's intentional. I think it's really important. We just talked about Yetis having free will. Humans having a higher level of thinking than other animals, and that this is represented in a Yeti being a little different, maybe a little more advanced than other monsters even that we've encountered.
And using the hot springs. That's a fun one.
Right. But this animal does not have the emotional response one would expect from the recent death of a partner and loved one and a mate. Yeah. There's a very
practical,
cold and pragmatic,
pragmatic
sort of attitude towards death that Ark takes issue to more so when, after passing a night there in a cave they can't escape, and in surviving by sharing their body warmth to get through the night, she offers breakfast.
The scene was wild,
and says, "Hey, you know, the cold has kept the flesh fresh. It's not rotting."
Ark objects. Ark is like, "What? Eat this?" And she's like, "No, don't worry. It's cold. The flesh is preserved. It's not going
as if that was the objection."
Yes. Very good. Fascinating stuff. Also, right before this, it's interesting to note too that we are kept warm by the goat, and then Ark says like, "Oh, this warmth brings back memories." Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is memories.
That's I thought of this too.
Yeah, memories of being a child, I would assume.
Yeah, I even thought maybe like pre-birth. I mean,
right?
Almost like in the womb.
Very good. I think so. Almost like the development of a child mirrors the development of animals, like going up, right? Mm-hmm. Which is sort of true in some way. It also is the first hint that Ark might have had a mother in some way, right? Because we don't really get that much, other than he exists. We don't really get that much from anywhere in the village. Mm-hmm. But he has this warm memory, this memory of warmth. Yeah. And then the goat is like, "We're going to eat my husband. It's all good. There's nothing weird about it. It's nothing weird."
Sit down. All right. Yeah. There's nothing weird.
Nothing weird going on. Tell me what you made of Ark's reaction, coupled with the fact that when you go back later, this goat died and the husband is still preserved, meaning that we didn't just not eat. We convinced this goat to also not eat herself.
That's a very, very interesting point in all of this.
Well, I have some writing, but I actually want your thoughts first.
Well,
you can read a little more.
I didn't take the note on the latter part of that, which was the returning, and
because that doesn't happen till later.
Yeah,
fair enough.
So that is still a really, really important part of this. But what I wrote down was the mountain goat says it's fine, it's cold, so it won't rot for a while. Yeah. And Ark's response is, that's not the problem. Yeah. This is your husband. You can eat that? And the goat says, of course, that's exactly why I can eat that.
Yeah, that was
if I were to die, the world would be less another goat.
One less goat, yeah.
My husband sustaining me is what he would want. There's no point in dying and being less another goat. Like, but there's a certain another level of thinking about it, of disrespect, of a certain attitude about how we should treat the dead and honor them, that is way beyond how an animal thinks about life and death, right? Yeah, totally. Not to say that animals don't have strong emotions. We know that they do. Yeah. And it usually is the higher level of thinking an animal has. Right. The more you will see emotional responses. You know, dogs obviously understand loss.
Elephants.
Certainly other primates.
Yeah.
You know, there's that really, really sad video of, I forget the name of the female gorilla that they had in captivity who they taught sign language to.
Coco, yeah.
Had a pet. She had a pet cat that she loved.
That's right.
And one day the zookeeper, I don't know what you call it, not a zookeeper, the person who takes care of the animals, what do you call that?
Yeah, it was a woman. I can't remember her name.
She had to explain that the cat had been hit by a car or had died. And Coco's response to that was, dare I say, human. I mean, very, very, very close. Yeah. So this is not to say that animals don't have emotional bonds and understand loss and death. It is to say that there are levels to the higher level of thinking, and that humans are obviously in this world on that highest end, maybe very closely followed by orcas and dolphins and
those things,
dogs and other primates and things. But they're not thinking about honoring the dead on this level. They're thinking about survival, because that's what's important in their world and in their experience in it. They don't have the luxury, let's say, of even the privilege. Let's call it that. They don't have the privilege of thinking about honoring the dead in this way. And so I think they're making a strong contrast here between the animals and the humans that we're resurrecting. Ark is a human. The Yetis are something human-like in sort of the monster form. Yeah. They introduce that, and then they're showing this strong contrast between how the goat thinks about this and how the human thinks about this. And I think they're just setting us up for, again, that sort of dual look at humanity from the outer perspective of the world, or as Ark, you could say, as the god of this world or something like that. They're showing a contrast in the higher or level of ability to think about concepts like this. And this is shocking to him. To her, it's completely natural. Right. Is one or the other wrong? That takes a whole nother level of conscious awareness and thought to even debate in the first place. Right. And I think that's what they're trying to evoke in the scene.
I think that's true. I think that's totally true. I also got heavy Undertale vibes from that goat, from 100%. The whole scene. The motherliness of the goat. This will not be the last time I say this, but Undertale certainly drew from this. And also just the general eeriness of what's happening. This felt like a scene directly from Undertale.
That's true.
Like you mentioned, Ark brings up this next level, this like higher order way of thinking that's like, you know, it's not, I don't think it's just necessarily respect for the dead. It's, I don't even know what you would call it. It's spiritual. It's an entirely spiritual thing. It's not physical. It's not practical. It's not pragmatic.
Is life.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Like what does this individual's life mean?
Right. Yeah. And what Ark, I think unintentionally introduces to this goat is a form of what eventually becomes self-sacrifice, right? This goat chooses not to eat her partner to sustain her. And if you go back here again, just later, whenever you have a chance, you will find that the goat is dead and her body is frozen, but that the Mr. Goat, that her husband, is also dead, body fully intact and frozen, meaning that it's not a skeleton or anything. It's this goat lady did not eat her husband, and it is because of Ark kind of leading life in the way that it should go. What is that quote that
at the end of each one of these, it says,
where it says you must lead the growth of living things. That last, like what Ark is doing is he is introducing basically the principle, more or less, of sacrificing yourself for a higher principle that maybe you don't quite entirely even understand yet. And that's crazy to introduce that to a goat. And for the goat, of course, it's a talking goat. It's basically a person for the intents of this game. But for him to introduce to the world this concept that then the goat is willing to take to the grave and die, having not defiled, the husband, and to maintain integrity and all that stuff. It's fascinating, but it once again reinforces my thinking that this is just a very spiritual game, but that Ark kind of represents something higher than just what he seems to be as you're just running around and killing things. That when Ark brings up ideas or talks to animals, or when people ask him for things, or when he shows reluctance to do something, it like spreads. It becomes contagious and not just isolated. It becomes something in the whole world that all of a sudden, like a lot of animals start, thinking this way, or because we do something in one place and it affects kind of the whole world, right? Which is very interesting. We'll see that a lot more with the humans. Like we resurrected the plants and the whole world's covered in plants, right? We resurrect the birds and the whole world's got birds, and the animals, the whole world. It's not just isolated. It's everything's happening locally and universally at the same time, right? So we can always just read it locally. Oh, he convinced this one goat to behave in a self-sacrificial manner when it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But also he's introducing this concept to the entire world, almost in this this way of a higher order way of being, right? Yeah. And that's what he's doing. He's leading the growth of things to the point that they eventually come to, and that's a part of it. I think it's really cool. It's really cool, and it's really deep, and it just gives you a much bigger view of what Ark is doing here.
Yeah.
He isn't just walking around trying to, make his way through an avalanche or whatever. He is leading the growth of things, and it will lead to a civilization that has a higher, more morality about it than what the animals are capable of on their own, without being guided by something.
Yeah, something like a god.
Something like a god.
So at the end of the scene, she finally kind of breaks through the wall. Oh, I found a way out. But when you get out there, it's just like this straight vertical wall that Ark can climb because he's got the claws from earlier, but she can't.
She can't.
And so she's like, oh, don't worry about it. I'll find some way out eventually. Of course, you find later the case. But
did she find a way out, though,
and then
in terms of death? No, in terms of dying.
In terms of dying.
Like, because she says one way or another, I'll find a way out. I'll be fine.
Gotcha.
That's interesting. I don't think that was not true. I think that she did find a way out, and the way out was to join her husband. But I found my note that I wrote down.
Oh.
This is actually a little different from what I just said, but moving from strict utility to possibly even sacrificing yourself for something invisible beyond the material. Ark prompts this from the goat, and she says that Ark must never give up when he meets challenges. This was an important thing. I think she has recognized, this whole conversation is pretty deep, I think. I don't think she's just saying that she'll get out of there one way or another, technically, or that he should just never give up, be strong. I think she's saying never give up on your ethics and morals, that the way that you just did now. Yeah. It was so funny because we refused to eat her husband.
Yes.
And then 2 seconds later, she's like, oh, well, the ice over here seems a little thin. I guess we can just hit it 3 times and then break it. We were just about to eat.
But also, how much time has passed?
That's a good question. I don't know. And I have no idea. But it's hilarious. That's true. It could have been weeks. The meat was well preserved. It could have been weeks. But basically, right after that conversation, it's, the ice is thin. Let's get out. Okay, boom, boom, boom. That was really quick. But she says, don't give up. I think we convinced her not to eat her husband. And she recognized the value in what we had just shared with her. And she's saying, don't give that up. I think that's what this is meaning. Don't give that up. She can die, but he must not, I think is what she says. Like, but you have to live. You have to survive. Not just you, the spirit of Ark, this idea of sacrifice for the greater good, in whatever way that may not even make sense to, this idea of thinking past just the technical utility, the technical, practical, or pragmatic use of things towards like maybe a deeper purpose that may be latent within all of this. And so that cannot go away because he taught her something valuable. And to never give up, when she says never give up, that is to continue leading life and the planet, especially in the ways that he just showed her.
Yeah.
So that's my full note on that.
That's great. My next note is on Dark Morph, who is the boss of the area.
Okay.
But you also seemed to have some stuff there. I'd like to hear what you got from that.
Okay,
what I don't meaning behind the design of that boss, or
I don't get the bats at the end. That's a little
the bats that he transforms into, moves from here to there.
It's Dracula, maybe. This is just like a vampire, right? He's a parasite, right? Maybe. But at first, it's sort of like this Yeti dude, right, who we're fighting, and then turns into this like shadowy looking human type form,
which is, I would say, the true form of the boss. Like the boss morphs into different shapes.
Yes.
So it can turn into this thing you fight. Then it transforms into this thing you fight.
So you mentioned that the Yetis were kind of human-like. I think this is the shadow of something human-like that exists within the Yetis, but that is, like we were saying before, that is not ordered properly. It is chaotic. It is still bent towards destruction, right? And it exists within the Yeti. And we kind of bring it out of the Yeti, and here it is. And now we have to confront that itself. And this is something that can eventually turn into humans, but that needs to be confronted first. That it is the obstacle towards whatever we're fighting, becoming whatever humans become, is itself. Like it is its own obstacle. It is human form. It looks human, but it's not human. It's not behaving properly. And we kind of need to fight the demon and exorcise whatever things that we don't like, get rid of all the impurities out of this thing before we can then immediately afterwards resurrect humanity, basically. That's something in my reading there. The bats, I don't know. This is weird.
Yeah, my thought was that this boss can sort of represent the duplicitous, deceitful, and even maybe adaptable nature of humanity, right?
That we all must conquer, right, within ourselves.
Which is why it's a shadow.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So, it's like this ability to, depending on the situation, analyze it and strategically change tactics. And to do so in a way that is using the mind rather than being a strong body or just like brute force, like maybe some of the previous bosses, which were giant monsters and
scorpion.
This is something that uses its intellect and uses strategy and deceit to sort of like outmaneuver you.
That's pretty good.
And that it might represent sort of that side. Again, the game being a framing of humanity, of what the essence of humanity is from an outer perspective, that this is sort of the, I don't know, the dark side, the dark side of the potential, maybe.
Yeah, of humans.
Because you have adaptability being something that's both good, but then what can adaptability also,
pull you down?
Yeah, how can it also be a harmful or destructive thing?
And that if that's what's in charge, humans will never reach their potential if that thing's in charge.
Yeah, and the intelligence being something that is such a gift, such a rare and an incredible aspect of humanity, and yet what can that intelligence be used for on the other side of that coin, for destruction, for both creation and for destruction, for deceit and for honesty, for all kinds of things that are like we're saying, the duality, the dual nature of humanity. Ark is representing the one side. This shadow dark morph is representing the other side.
Yeah, I think so.
That's kind of the way I read, what that boss represents. As you defeat it, though, the voice comes for the last time. Ark, the day has come for the resurrection of humans. Humans are wonderful animals with the ability to create technology, but they have no idea of the vast power they wield.
Yep.
Ark, you must keep leading the growth of the world. And this is where we see that scene we referenced earlier, where they have, it looks like some kind of, it's not hieroglyphics, but it's some kind of like proto language or characters or written language.
I couldn't tell if it was based on anything.
I don't know if it's based on something real or not, but it's sort of written on a wall or something like that. And you're kind of panning across that, and then you see Ark run and die.
Yeah.
A flower grows from his corpse. You have
a yak.
The yak or herbivore that eats that. The kingbird, which represents a carnivore that comes and eats the yak. I don't know why they didn't use a lion.
This is what confused me.
It should have been a fetching lion.
But there must be a reason, though.
I guess so.
Because they don't just show the one bird. Then they show another bird?
Well, it's reproducing. It's like a baby that hatches from an egg.
Okay. So I took it to be the yak died as carrion, and then the bird was eating its corpse like a
that could be true, too. Okay, that's probably more.
That's the best I could do.
Maybe it's not hunted. It was scavenged.
Scavenged,
or something like that. Okay, that makes sense. And so then the bird reproduces. There's a baby. A monster arrives and kills them both.
Yes.
And then Ark arrives again and kills the monster again.
The monster is where I have trouble understanding what this is saying.
So I think the monster here represents the death part of the cycle of the earth. Okay. So we had just talked about the possibility, the theory, I suppose, that those altars back in Zoo represented the counterpart of the 5 towers of the underworld, and that there's some sort of ritual happening here that was the destruction, and that Ark is doing the ritual for the resurrection.
Okay.
And that Ark comes to resurrect the world. Yeah. Ark dies. The world thrives. Monsters come and destroy the world. Ark comes and destroys the monsters and resurrects the world again.
I see what you mean.
So it's Ark comes to resurrect it. The monsters come to destroy it. Ark comes to resurrect it. The monsters come to destroy it in an unending cycle. Is what I took that to sort of.
I think that's probably right.
Yeah.
Because if you take the monsters to be something more abstract like death or destruction itself, I think that's probably fair.
Yeah.
I was thinking of it as a progression. I was like, oh, we're progressing to monsters and then humans. That threw me for a loop. I like your read though. I like your read a lot.
The music from the resurrection scene plays after this because that's kind of like a mysterious, almost like offsetting sort
it's
of
a little
music
different
for that part.
It's clearly building to something.
But when that fades to black, we get the resurrection music as if another resurrection scene is going to happen. And there isn't one. It's just dark. So that beautiful resurrection music is playing, but there is no resurrection scene. There's no visual to accompany it. It's just black.
Interesting.
And I wondered if you had thought about why they might have done that.
I wish I took notes there. We might have to start on that next week.
I'm not even sure. We might maybe we will revisit it because now that's the end of my notes. We go to chapter 3, but I just found that really, really interesting. That for the resurrection of humans, for the resurrection of animals, birds, plants, continents, everything had a beautiful visual to accompany it, and humans got darkness.
Interesting.
And I know that must mean something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
There is also the fact that, I don't think it's a spoiler, but the opening of chapter 3 is Ark awaking from a long sleep.
Some years.
Unconsciousness.
Yeah.
How much time has passed?
Well, it says 3 years. Oh, you're right. But deep sleep.
I think he was asleep for a year. They actually mention.
I wrote 3 years.
He was in a coma for like a year or something like that.
Gotcha.
But how long did it take them to discover his body?
We're talking a couple million years probably.
So from the time they found him to the time he woke up, it was a year.
But really on the earth, millions of years had to have passed.
Right.
When I say really, I'm just technically
could have passed.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's the end of chapter 3. We'll let you guys mull on that. Why no resurrection scene for the humans? appreciate you, and hopefully you're enjoying this series. Chapter 3 is very long, so I would suggest finishing Chapter 3. Just do it. Just beat it.
But we may not get through it all.
Certainly, it will be split into 2. And my idea currently, we'll see how this goes, is that Chapter 3 will be split between Old World and New World.
Oh, okay.
So we'll do the Old World part first.
Okay, all the way through
New
Portugal.
World part second.
Okay.
Yeah, all the way up through Portugal.
Okay.
And then New World part second after that, which is
sounds great.
So play through all that, and we will see you guys next week. Peace out.